In this short video, we're going to learn how to solve a monopoly problem when a tax is levied on the monopolist. Let's imagine that Whisk Takers, a local bakery, is the sole producer of angel food cakes in a small New England town. They operate as a monopoly in this market. The bakery's marginal cost function is 12 plus 2Q, and they face an inverse demand curve of P equals 48 minus 0.5Q. We are also told that Whisk Taker's profit maximizing output is Q equals 12, and they charge a price of $42 per cake. So this is what their behavior is without the tax. Now let's imagine that the government levies a tax of $6 per cake on Whisk Takers. From here, we're going to do three things. We're going to determine their new profit maximizing quantity and price. We're going to figure out how much of the tax consumers pay, and then how much of the tax Whisk Takers, the producer, has to pay. What do we need to know in order to answer this question? We need to know the firm's total cost or their marginal cost. Here, we're provided with their marginal cost. We need to know the demand for the firm's product. It could be a demand curve or an inverse demand curve like we see here. And finally, we need to know the size of the tax. How are we going to solve this question? Well, we need to somehow incorporate the tax into the story, so we're going to update the marginal cost to reflect the tax. Once we do that, we'll find the new profit maximizing quantity by setting this updated marginal cost curve equal to marginal revenue. And once we have that Q star, we can find the new price using the original inverse demand curve. So it just requires a slight update to the marginal cost to reflect the additional cost that this tax generates. Let's solve this question. So here's what we know: the marginal cost, the inverse demand, and the size of the tax. And the first thing we're going to find is the new profit maximizing quantity and price. Step one is to update that marginal cost curve to reflect the tax. How exactly do we do that? Well, it turns out that the marginal cost under the tax is going to be equal to the original marginal cost curve plus the tax. Now, this is only true because we have a per unit tax. That's the only kind of tax we work with in this class. So applying what we know, we get that the marginal cost under the tax is equal to 12 plus 2Q plus 6. Combining the 12 and the 6, we get our final form. Marginal cost under the tax is 18 plus 2Q. I'm going to call that equation 1. Next, we need to find the total and marginal revenue curves. We've done this lots of times. The total revenue is price times quantity, where price is 48 minus 0.5Q. We multiply that by Q. Expanding it gives us 48Q minus 0.5Q squared. To find the marginal revenue curve, we take the derivative of the total revenue curve with respect to Q, which will be 48 minus Q, because we bring down the 2 and it turns the 0.5 into a 1. We'll call that equation 2. So we've updated our marginal cost curve, we've derived our marginal revenue curve, and the rest is going to look just like a standard monopoly question. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our updated marginal cost curve, 18 plus 2Q, we're going to set it equal to 48 minus Q, and we're going to solve for Q. Collecting my Q terms on the left-hand side of the equation, I get 2 plus 1 is 3. So 3Q is equal to 48 minus 18, which is 30. Dividing both sides by 3, I get that Q under the tax is equal to 10. Now that we know Q equals 10, the next step is just to substitute that value into the inverse demand curve to find price. So in this case, price is going to equal 48 minus 0.5 times 10. 0.5 times 10 is 5. 48 minus 5 is 43. So the price under the tax is equal to $43. So we know a lot. We found our marginal cost, our marginal revenue, profit maximizing quantity under the tax, and our price. Now we have two more questions we're going to answer. How much of the tax do consumers pay, and how much of the tax does the monopolist pay? In order to fully understand the answer to this question, we have to remind ourselves that when there is no tax, the price is $42. And then really this is kind of a conversation that we have in our head to remind us what math to do. I don't recommend it memorizing any formulas, instead conceptually understanding what's going on. So consumers used to pay $42 when there was no tax. Now they pay $43, the price with the tax in place. That means that how much are they paying? Well, they used to pay $43. Now they used to pay $42 and now they pay $43. There we go. So to figure out how much of the tax consumers pay, we're really just going to subtract what they're paying now minus what they used to pay and observe that they pay $1 more because of the tax. And that must mean that this is what they're paying. So they pay $1 more. From here, we could infer that it must be that the monopolist is paying $5 of the $6 tax. That would be great, but I want to make sure we understand why, so we're going to do a little bit more work. Whisk takers, the monopolist, used to charge a price of 42. Now they charge a price of 43, but they don't get to keep $43. So it's nice to sort of think about what they keep. They keep 43 minus the $6 tax because they're the ones that are responsible for sending that money to the government. That means that for every cake they sell, they only get to keep $37. So now we think about it again. We say to ourselves, they used to get to keep $42. Now they only get to keep $37. So how much do they pay? They pay 42 minus 37. 42 minus 37, which is equal to $5 of the tax. So when you're solving for these like tax incidence values, always make sure that the two sum up to the total amount of the tax at the end. And make sure that it makes sense, right? Buyers should be paying more because of the tax. They pay $1 more. And sellers should be keeping less because of the tax. And they are. They used to keep 42 and now they keep 37. So it all makes sense in our head once we take a look at our final work.